In December 1945, 5 Navy bombers vanished without a trace during a routine training flight, launching the legend of the Bermuda Triangle. For decades, Flight 19 was lost to the deep, fueling theories of alien abduction, time warps, and magnetic mysteries. Now, after 81 years of breakthrough, an underwater drone has captured chilling images from the ocean floor that may finally reveal what happened. Are these the missing Avengers? Is the mystery solved, or just beginning? What the drone saw could rewrite everything we thought we knew about one of the most haunting disappearances in aviation history. Naval routine turns ominous. The sky was calm that afternoon. 5 Navy TBM Avenger bombers lifted off from Fort Lauderdale on what was supposed to be a routine training mission. Flight 19, they called it. The assignment? Practice bombing runs over a shallow reef, then turn north and back to base. Every pilot knew the route. Nothing about the day seemed unusual. Leading the formation was Lieutenant Charles Taylor, a respected instructor with over 2,500 flying hours. His voice crackled through the radio as they made their way east over the Atlantic. The first runs over Hens and Chickens shoals went smoothly, just as planned. "Bombs away," one crewman reported. All systems normal. The weather was fair. Visibility was good. It was, by all accounts, a textbook exercise. But sometime after 3:15 p.m., Taylor's voice came back over the radio, shaken. "I don't know where we are," he said. "We must have got lost after that last turn." Something was off. He reported both compasses were malfunctioning. The pilots couldn't recognize any land below them. "We can't find west," Taylor added. "Everything looks wrong. Even the ocean." Their voices began to sound more panicked. The calm mission was turning into a crisis. Fuel was running out fast. The planes were too far from land, disoriented, and now facing sunset. One final message came through. "When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together." After that, nothing. 5 planes, 14 men, gone in silence over calm water. As soon as communication was lost, Navy personnel on the ground launched a frantic effort to make contact. But with every silent minute, urgency turned into fear. What came next would take the mystery even deeper and claim even more lives. Panic over the waves. Flight 19 was drifting blind. Around 3:30 p.m., Taylor's transmissions became harder to follow. He insisted the instruments were working, but said the land below made no sense. "I'm sure we're over the Gulf of Mexico," he guessed. But that was impossible. They had flown east, not west. The others followed his lead, unsure and running low on fuel. Confusion was setting in quickly. One pilot asked, "Should we just fly west to try and hit the coast?" Taylor replied, "If we just head west, we'll get lost in the ocean." His uncertainty spread to the others. By 5:00 p.m., the crew's final messages grew darker. One said, "White water. We're entering white water." No one was quite sure what he meant. Was it mist? Was it fear? No one could say for sure. The radios went quiet after that. Fuel gauges were dropping to empty. The sun had set. And with no confirmed position, no visual landmarks, and no working compass, each pilot prepared to ditch into the open sea. "It looks like we're going down." One voice was heard faintly, then static. This wasn't just a training flight gone wrong. It was now a full-blown disappearance. 5 planes vanished without a trace. Not a splash seen, not a flare fired. And the Navy's next move, to send a rescue, would only deepen the mystery. Within the hour, a massive search and rescue effort kicked off. Aircraft and ships scoured the Atlantic. But when the rescue plane itself disappeared without a trace, the story of Flight 19 became something else entirely, a mystery too strange for explanation. Fuel and confusion. At 7:27 p.m., a Navy PBM Mariner with 13 crew members took off from Banana River Naval Air Station to find Flight 19. It was one of the military's go-to rescue planes, large, stable, and reliable. But just 20 minutes into the flight, the Mariner vanished from radar. No distress signal, no beacon. It was simply gone. The shock was immediate. The Navy was now missing not just 5 planes, but 6, and 27 men in total. What made it worse was the speed. The Mariner had disappeared almost instantly. Civilian ships in the area reported seeing a flash in the sky. Some believed it was an explosion. But there were no oil slicks, no debris, no bodies. Nothing. The next few days saw one of the largest search operations in history at the time. Over 250,000 square miles of ocean were covered by boats, aircraft, and radar. All 5 Avengers. The PBM Mariner, not one confirmed piece of wreckage was ever recovered. Some called the Mariner a flying gas tank, hinting at an onboard explosion. But that didn't explain the total silence, or why neither crew had a chance to call for help. To this day, not a single piece of Flight 19 has been conclusively found. No life rafts, no parachutes, no emergency signals, just a gaping hole in history where 6 planes and 27 men should be. With so many unanswered questions, the Navy launched an investigation. But the deeper they dug, the stranger it got. And the final report? It raised more questions than it answered. The rescue that vanished too. As the clock ticked and daylight faded, the Navy scrambled to act. A PBM Mariner, one of their largest and most capable rescue planes, was dispatched from Banana River Naval Air Station. The mission? Locate Flight 19. 13 experienced crewmen climbed aboard. This aircraft was built for rough ocean landings and long searches. If anything could find the missing squadron, it was this. But the Mariner never reached the search zone. About 10 minutes after takeoff, it simply disappeared. There were no distress calls, no alerts. One merchant ship in the area reported seeing a flash in the sky, a burst of fire, then darkness. It was gone. Instantly. The Mariner's nickname among sailors, the flying gas tank, suddenly seemed less like a joke and more like a warning. This second disappearance turned the Flight 19 incident from a tragedy into something much darker. How could 2 aircraft formations disappear on the same day in the same zone without a trace? The Navy launched a search covering over 250,000 square miles, hundreds of hours of flight time, dozens of ships, and still, no sign of wreckage. No oil slick, no floating debris. It was like the sea had swallowed them whole. Planes just don't vanish, one Navy official said at the time. But here they had, and with the Mariner's loss, the total count rose to 27 men missing in a single afternoon. 5 from the training squadron and 13 from the rescue. The odds were staggering, the explanations even more elusive. Under public pressure and media attention, the Navy launched an internal review. The official report tried to offer answers, but what it revealed only widened the mystery and left a trail of questions behind. Errors or mysteries. In the weeks that followed, the Navy conducted a formal investigation. The initial conclusion blamed Lieutenant Charles Taylor, the Flight 19 leader, citing navigational error. The report said Taylor became disoriented and led his men into the wrong area, eventually running out of fuel. His compass, the Navy suggested, may have malfunctioned, a tragic but human mistake. But not everyone agreed. Taylor was an experienced pilot, over 10,500 hours in the air. His squadron was filled with trained men, not amateurs. Some of them radioed back suggesting heading west to return to base. But Taylor overruled them. Still, could he have been so confused that he mistook the Bahamas for the Florida Keys? Or was something more unusual happening? Oddly enough, the Navy later revised their report. They changed the cause from pilot error to cause unknown. Officially, they said, there wasn't enough evidence to blame Taylor. This reversal raised eyebrows. Some thought it was to avoid blaming a dead officer. Others felt it was a quiet admission that something wasn't adding up. As for the PBM Mariner rescue plane, the Navy settled on a likely explosion caused by a fuel leak. These things were flying bombs, one officer admitted. But even that explanation couldn't account for the complete absence of wreckage. Planes explode all the time, but rarely do they vanish without a single trace. With so many unanswered questions, Flight 19 became something more than a military mystery. It became legend, and within just a few years, it would spark the birth of one of the greatest mysteries of the modern age, the Bermuda Triangle. Birth of the Bermuda Triangle myth. The story of Flight 19 didn't fade. It spread. By the 1960s, it was appearing in newspapers, magazines, and books. And in 1964, author Vincent Gaddis gave the region a new name, the Bermuda Triangle. He called it a place where ships and planes vanished without reason, where normal rules didn't apply. A triangle of mystery stretching from Miami to Bermuda to Puerto Rico. In the years that followed, the idea took off. Other disappearances were linked to the area, the USS Cyclops, the Carroll A. Deering, and countless aircraft. The pattern seemed undeniable. Ships that never radioed for help, planes that vanished from clear skies. It's like a curse, one headline claimed. Writers like Charles Berlitz fueled the fire. His 1974 book, The Bermuda Triangle, became a bestseller, pushing theories like alien abductions, time warps, and underwater cities. TV specials aired worldwide, and Flight 19 became the Triangle's crown jewel, the incident that started it all. The idea was gripping. How could so many disappear so cleanly? But skeptics pushed back. They argued the Bermuda Triangle was a myth built from coincidence and selective memory. The ocean is massive, unpredictable, and filled with storms. Planes and ships go missing in every part of the world. But something about the triangle caught the public's imagination. It wasn't just the facts, it was the silence, the scale, and the impossibility of it all. Despite the mythology, the mystery of Flight 19 never stopped attracting real investigators. And decades later, armed with new technology and underwater drones, they set out to solve the mystery once and for all. 21st century searches. 70 years after Flight 19 vanished, the ocean still hadn't given up its secrets. But now the tools had changed. In the early 2000s, explorers and engineers began using cutting-edge submersibles, sonar arrays, and autonomous underwater vehicles to scan the depths of the Bermuda Triangle. Their goal wasn't treasure, it was truth. The RV Petrel, funded by the late Paul Allen, was one of the first to attempt deep-sea missions in the region. Others followed. Pioneering engineer Graham Hawkes brought mini-submarines designed to reach depths up to 3 miles, where pressure can crush steel like a soda can. These machines scanned seafloor canyons and vast sediment plains, some untouched since the Ice Age. And in these silent, alien landscapes, they began to find wreckage. They found dozens of aircraft remains, from Cold War jets to long-lost cargo planes. But none matched Flight 19. Time had scattered the wreckage far and wide. Tail numbers were missing. Decay made visual identification nearly impossible. Still, explorers kept going, hoping that one day the ocean would point to the truth. With every dive, the technology improved. AI-driven sonar mapping created detailed topographic scans of the seafloor. Underwater drones stitched together photogrammetry models, accurate down to a single bolt. Each pass was like peeling away a layer of time. And then, in 2020, something extraordinary appeared on a remote sonar screen. One of the drones picked up a shape unlike the others, familiar, but buried. It was the beginning of what some would call the first real glimpse of Flight 19 since that fateful day in 1945. Did we finally see Flight 19? The drone's name was Aquila 7, part of an international underwater archaeology mission. While scanning a deep trench off the coast of the Bahamas, it picked up the outline of an aircraft, intact enough to draw gasps from the mission team. The frame was unmistakably vintage, and it bore the twin-tail design of the TBM Avenger torpedo bomber, the very type flown by Flight 19. The shape wasn't scattered or shattered like crash debris. It was relatively preserved, with wings still partially attached and the fuselage settled upright on the seafloor. The drone's high-resolution cameras swept across it, catching glimpses of corroded metal, twisted propeller blades, and what looked like a faded Navy star still clinging to one wing. Experts immediately compared the dimensions and placement with original Flight 19 logs. The match was eerily close. The location sat within a possible path of Taylor's last known heading. Depth, weather data, and fuel calculations also fit. While formal identification hadn't been made, many started calling it a likely find. News spread quickly. Headlines read, "Has Flight 19 finally been found?" Skeptics held back, but even they admitted it was the strongest lead yet. "It's the best candidate we've ever had," said Dr. Ava Renshaw, a naval historian. Everything about it aligns with what we know. But before claiming a discovery this historic, the team needed proof. And so the focus turned to the science. Every bolt, every shadow, every contour had to tell the story. That's where the real work began. Science behind the sighting. To rule out coincidence, the discovery team used a range of high-tech tools to analyze the wreck. The drone's multi-beam sonar scanned the site from every angle, creating a full 3D model. Back on land, engineers compared this model to official blueprints of the TBM-3 Avenger. Everything matched, from the wingspan to the engine mountings. Next came the sediment analysis. Scientists looked at the corrosion patterns, the marine growth, and the layer of silt around the plane. Their findings suggested the wreck had been lying undisturbed for over 70 years, just long enough to date back to 1900. This wasn't a modern crash. Whatever it was old. Even the orientation told a story. The debris didn't show signs of high-speed impact. Instead, it looked like a controlled ditch, perhaps a last-ditch landing attempt when fuel ran out. The propellers were bent in a way that suggested they were still spinning when the plane hit water. The cockpit glass was missing, likely popped from pressure or impact. To eliminate false positives, researchers ruled out known shipwrecks and geological formations in the area. But coral didn't match the radar bounce. Fish schools didn't mimic the sonar echo. This was metal, structured, and very intentional, said Dr. Renshaw. It wasn't nature, it was history. But despite the mounting evidence, not everyone was ready to celebrate. The mystery of Flight 19 had lived for decades, and now it stood at the crossroads of proof and belief. Debunkers versus believers. As the images of the underwater wreck made headlines, two camps quickly formed. On one side were the believers, aviation experts, naval historians, and even some family members who felt certain this was Flight 19. On the other, skeptics who cautioned that many World War II era planes ended up in these waters. Without serial numbers or a crew ID, the find was compelling, but not conclusive. Skeptics pointed out that multiple Avenger aircraft were lost during training missions throughout the 1940s. Some had similar flight paths. Others had no recorded impact zone. "We've seen this before," said marine archaeologist Dr. Kent Lozano. "Until you see a tail number, you can't make that call." Still others argued the aircraft's condition and location aligned too perfectly with Flight 19's known path to ignore. Believers pushed back hard. Independent expeditions began organizing new dives, this time with remotely operated vehicles equipped to cut through barnacles and sediment. Their goal? Get close enough to examine structural details, maybe even uncover a nameplate or data plate from inside the fuselage. These would be the final keys to certainty. Meanwhile, conspiracy theories flooded online forums. The Bermuda Triangle legend flared up again, claims that the aircraft had been moved or preserved unnaturally, or perhaps returned after years of being missing. Most scientists brushed this aside. "It's not mystery we're after," said Dr. Renshaw. "It's answers." And while the public wrestled with wonder and doubt, researchers returned to the core question. Why did Flight 19 vanish at all? For that, they turned to the skies, where weather, magnetism, and simple human decisions could have written the ending. Natural culprits, not aliens. Scientists at NOAA and military historians agree. The disappearance of Flight 19 didn't require a supernatural explanation. It may have been a tragic mix of weather, magnetic confusion, and mechanical stress, deadly but explainable. Magnetic declination, the natural difference between true north and magnetic north, can shift subtly over oceans. If a pilot miscalculates this offset, especially without landmarks, they can veer dozens of miles off course. And on that day in 1945, the alignment of the sun and moon further muddled compass readings, something flight leader Charles Taylor may have struggled with. Sudden storms are also notorious in the Bermuda Triangle. Warm Gulf Stream waters collide with cooler air, triggering fast, violent weather changes. Several witnesses reported a white haze in the sky that day. Some theorists now think this was the onset of a fast-moving squall, blinding pilots and throwing them further off course. As for the rescue plane that vanished, the PBM Mariner, its mystery might not be a mystery at all. These aircraft had a grim nickname, flying gas tanks. A vapor leak or engine spark could trigger a fireball midair. No distress call would follow. The Navy eventually concluded this was the likeliest cause, even if no wreckage was ever found. But beyond the theories and sonar scans, there was something else: memory. Across generations, the loss of Flight 19 left behind more than confusion. It left a legacy, memorializing the lost. At the Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale Museum, an entire room is dedicated to Flight 19. Maps, model planes, and weather charts line the walls. In the center, 5 framed portraits look out, one for each pilot, frozen in youth. This is where their stories kept alive. Local historians like Dr. Charles Bloom have spent years interviewing families, collecting letters, and preserving the oral history. These men were more than a mystery, he says. They were sons, husbands, and brothers. They were just doing their job. Every December 5th, a small ceremony is held. Survivors, relatives, and veterans gather to mark the anniversary. A bell is rung 27 times, once for each life lost. Flight 19's disappearance is now taught in U.S. naval academies. Not as a myth, but as a case study in navigation, fuel limits, and situational awareness. It's a sobering reminder that routine missions can turn fatal when variables stack up. In pop culture, Flight 19 remains iconic. From documentaries to dramatizations, its story keeps resurfacing. But in places like Fort Lauderdale, the focus isn't on aliens or anomalies. It's on memory and what we can learn from loss. And as technology catches up with legend, we are left with a final question, not just about what happened, but what the mystery has taught us about ourselves. Mystery, science, humanity. Whether or not the wreck found in 2025 is truly from Flight 19, one thing is clear: the legend is bigger than the planes. It's about how we face the unknown. For decades, Flight 19 symbolized everything we fear about the deep, vanishing without a trace, swallowed by silence. But now science has peeled back that silence. New sonar tools, forensic modeling, and sediment analysis have given researchers something they never had before: a path forward. What was once myth can now be mapped. What was once speculation can now be measured. Even if full confirmation is still out of reach, each step brings us closer to truth. More than that, it humanizes the men who vanished. The flight wasn't cursed, it was complicated. Men caught in a storm of poor visibility, confusing readings, and dwindling fuel, doing the best they could in a world without GPS or satellites. They didn't disappear, says Dr. Renshaw. They were lost, and we're still trying to bring them home. And that, perhaps, is the lasting legacy of Flight 19. Not a tale of the unexplained, but a testament to those who faced uncertainty with courage. The ocean may still guard its secrets, but thanks to the efforts of engineers, historians, and family members, those secrets are closer to the surface than ever before. For over 8 decades, the disappearance of Flight 19 has haunted aviation history like a ghost that refused to be forgotten. It was never just a story about 5 planes that vanished. It was about the limits of human understanding, about the thin line between order and case, and about the secrets that the sea still keeps. The Bermuda Triangle, once dismissed by some as nothing more than a myth or media invention, continues to intrigue because it sits at the crossroads of science, folklore, and unanswered questions. Now, with the most advanced underwater drone technology, we are inching closer to clarity. The drone's discovery doesn't just hint at closure. It represents the culmination of decades of effort from historians, engineers, and families who never stopped searching. And in the salt-bitten wreckage, in the twisted fuselages and scattered metal, we find more than evidence. We find stories. We find bravery, confusion, duty, and perhaps most hauntingly, the echo of final decisions made in the dark. This discovery is more than just the potential solution to a mystery. It's a reminder of how fragile our systems can be, how even a simple training flight, led by experienced pilots, can spiral into uncertainty when nature, technology, and human choices collide. Flight 19 wasn't the product of some supernatural force. It was a chain of small errors, unfolding in a world that hadn't yet invented GPS or weather satellites. That's what makes it so human. And yet, as we stand on the edge of this discovery, we also acknowledge that some questions may never be fully answered. The ocean holds its dead closely. But even if we never recover every body, every nameplate, or every last shred of confirmation, the effort itself tells us something profound. That truth matters, that memory matters, that stories left open for too long deserve endings, not to bury them, but to honor them. So as researchers prepare for more dives, and as sonar maps get sharper and clearer, one thing is certain. Flight 19 is no longer just a legend lost in time. It is now part of a living archive, one that speaks not just of mystery, but of resilience, remembrance, and the human drive to understand what lies beneath.